listening to the 40 Thrive Podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Welcome to another episode of 40 Thrive. We're wrapping up the year and ready to take on 2021 by storm. As I have told you over and over again, I'm even more committed to helping you thrive in 2021. Work, wealth, wellness, those are our focuses for 2021. So keep coming back because we're here to help. On today's episode, I am speaking with Stephanie Raffelock. Stephanie is the author of a delightful little book on aging, which you don't often hear delightful and aging necessarily together, but we have a really interesting conversation about all the messaging that's out there and all the things that we're bombarded with as we get older, including those medicine commercials. Like, come on now. But we also talk about the opportunity that we have at this time in our lives to really just go for it. And so sit back, grab a cup of coffee or something stronger, and enjoy this conversation I had with Stephanie Raffelock. Stephanie, welcome to 40 Thrive.
Hey, thank you so much.
The title of your book already just sort of makes me happy. A delightful little book on aging.
Yeah.
What made you come up with that?
Well, it's a weird juxtaposition, isn't it? Because you don't expect to see delightful and aging in the same sentence. But this has really been my work the last several years, and it will continue to be my work. And it's this idea about where is our value as women as we get older? How do we go into that? Is it really about trying to keep age at bay, or is it really trying to pull in the vitality of life so that we live life in this vital, full way for the rest of our days, regardless of the number of years? So it's the vital part that's the delightful part.
Right. I love that. Now, you say you've been doing this for a number of years. At what point in your life were you like, I need to focus my work on aging?
You know, it was one of those happy accidents that I tripped over. I wish I could tell you that I consciously went into it, but I didn't. I was writing for places where I could be published. I had retired from work and I just wanted to write and publish. So I worked for a little newspaper in the Rogue Valley in Oregon called the Rogue Valley Messenger. And then I wrote for a lot of websites, wherever I could get published. And I was writing for a website called 60andme.com. And as I wrote these little articles, I started to get a tremendous amount of feedback. And I went, oh my gosh, there's like a whole population of women out there that don't really identify with the stereotype of what it is to be an older woman. So that's what got me interested. That's how it became my work. And my first book is a compilation of a lot of those early articles and early posts. When I was first writing about aging, it's like, how can you make this more fun than what you see on advertising?
Right. What would you say are the stereotypes versus what they didn't identify with?
Well, the stereotypes are you get into your 60s and you're irrelevant or you're insignificant. I hear a lot of women say, I feel insignificant. And I started to see that that's a call that's coming from inside the house.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, as much as it is out there. I mean, there is a sense of, well, you're not targeted by advertising anymore in the way that you were in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and even into your 50s.
Of course you are. They just happen to be medications. And
right, medication depends. You're going to wear a necklace around your neck so in case you fall and you can't get up.
Exactly. There's plenty of advertising. Just watch daytime television.
So I have two girlfriends in Ashland, Oregon. One of them hikes all over the world. And she'll put like 40 pounds, 50 pounds on her back, and she'll go out on the John Muir Trail by herself for 2.5 weeks. And she says, I lose my age when I'm on the trail.
Oh, wow.
I have another girlfriend that does this big bike ride that goes from Ashland up to around Crater Lake. It's really a grind and a haul. And I know that there's lots of 30-year-olds that are passing her on bikes, but it's what she does. So these are the kind of women I was familiar with. I hadn't yet met the woman that was having so many health difficulties that she couldn't function in the world. Now, I know those people are out there and I don't want to live in a bubble, but I think that we have an opportunity for health and vitality in our life that we don't take full advantage of.
So were you one of those women as well, or did these people sort of motivate you to become one?
No, I was one of those women because I came from an athletic background. So I had some healthy habits that were built in. I had good eating habits and I had good exercise habits. So that was helpful to me when I got into my 60s. But I concentrated more on those things because your body does change. I don't play tennis anymore. I have some disc degeneration in my lower back, so I can't play tennis. So then how do I adapt? Well, I can still hike. I can still walk. So if I get out and walk 4 or 5 miles a day, it's not the same cardiovascular as tennis, but it's darn close.
Right.
If you walk briskly. There are other means of adaptation that you can do. I do part of my yoga on a mat, and I do part of my yoga in a chair where I can have a little bit of back support. So it's adaptability. And are you willing to adapt, or are you just going to complain that you're getting older?
Right. And, can you do both? Is it okay to do both?
I think it's okay to do both. I think there's a time and place for whining.
Especially with the girlfriends, when you start to compare, like, what has happened,
Right.
I love those conversations.
Yes.
Because I think there's solidarity in honesty. Look at even aging on Instagram, right? I mean, it's like the whole, like, we're going gray, we're owning our lives, we're all of that stuff, but you don't see a lot of the struggle, which I guess that's not what Instagram is for. But I do enjoy having conversations where we go, oh, these are the challenges. Let's get real about them. And now let's find solutions and not just pretend they don't exist.
Right. Those kinds of conversations are a touchstone to reality. And certainly in your 60s or 70s, what gives you vitality is an authenticity of heart. So it's really important to be honest with yourself. How do you want to live like the last part of your life? How do you want to go from midlife to the very end? Well, hopefully you want to go in the most sincere, authentic way that you can. And that involves having those conversations about, when I wake up in the morning, I have aches. I have the same kind of aches and pains my mom used to talk about. And I do these stretches and stuff. I go through all kinds of configurations to get myself out of that so that then I do the day feeling better in my body.
Right. You just may have to sound like, snap, crackle, pop for a couple of minutes.
Oh my gosh. It's like going up the stairs. I don't know what happened to my ankles, but going up the stairs, it does sound like Rice Krispies, Geez, when did that happen?
Right. It's an ongoing joke in my house. I'll hear my husband like grunt or make some sort of noise that I don't necessarily recognize. And I'm like, are you okay, honey? And he goes, yep, just 53.
Yeah. Like, what was that moment when you first grunted getting out of the car?
Right. Or when you had to do that rock back before you could actually get yourself off the floor or out of a chair.
Right.
And I know, I'm only 49, so I've got plenty of years ahead of me, but I'm the 11th kid in my family. And so I've been watching my 10 older siblings age well before me.
Yeah.
It can be difficult, but it's also, I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the ability to age and to really come into my own as I approach 50. And I know my listeners are the same way.
Well, I think there's this tremendous surge that's going on with midlife women right now in our culture, like nothing we've ever seen before. And I came of age at the edges of feminism. So I've seen feminism go through a lot of different phases, but there's something totally different that's happening with women right now. And it's a great creative surge. It's an unleashing of owning one's power, of throwing the stake into the ground and saying, you know what? I claim this for myself. I claim my leadership role. We've stopped becoming that, kind of coy ingenue, which I think is what 50 used to be. You just try to preserve that for as long as you can. It's like, can I milk my ingenue just a few more years? And now it's become something else.
Right. How do you think that happened?
Well, I think it's been a very slow progression where you hit a tipping point. And the slow progression probably started with oral contraception. That changed women's life more than anything else that had happened in our culture in the last 100 years. Women now could plan their own families. Then women started entering the workforce because if you could plan your own family, you could actually plan out a career for yourself.
Right.
So now women are entering the workforce, and now women are fighting for equal opportunity to have the good jobs, to get the good education, all those different things. And then things really spiraled because you had a couple of events that happened right on top of each other. One was you had the Women's March of 2017, where women got together and said to their husbands and their kids, come along if you want, but I am marching. I'm going to make a stand about something that I feel strongly about. And right on the heels of that, you had the hashtag Me Too movement. And what was crucial about hashtag Me Too was that it became a symbol for thousands and thousands and thousands of women who had experienced abuse in the workplace. And suddenly they all identified with each other. And once you let go of a secret, your creativity really comes out. Secrets, keeping those kinds of secrets, hold us back. They hold back our creativity. So hashtag Me Too happened and things exploded. And then you had the 2018 midterms where more women over the age of 50 ran for local, state, and national office than ever before in our history. So it was like the convergence of all these things is what led us to this creative surge.
Kind of like a perfect storm of things, one thing after another, after another. And once you start being vocal and open and finding other people who say, me too,
Right.
Then there's so much power in that. I talk about confidence a lot on the show. And I think confidence, and I have plenty of guests and psychologists and all that who back it up, that confidence happens when you start to understand that no matter what happens in your life, you can get through it. And I believe that if we talk about it to each other, whether it's on a podcast publicly or it's just quietly behind closed doors, there's so much power in that. You're absolutely right. Now, one of the things you talk about is the rising voice of midlife women. Do you think that it was these events that led to this movement of the rising voice?
Yes. And the reason I think that it is a rising voice is that there was a time when we did tell these stories to each other, the hashtag Me Too kind of stories, but there wasn't a symbol for it. And they were told in hushed tones in ladies' rooms where the most well-intended girlfriend will say, well, you know, boys will be boys.
Right.
Or just, you know, like, get over it. It wasn't public. It wasn't vocal. What was unique about this passage of hashtag Me Too was it became vocal publicly. We were no longer telling this in hushed tones in a ladies' room somewhere. We were out in the open.
One of the things that I have heard is that women over 40, 50, 60 don't necessarily feel as physically viable, as, you know, sexually attractive, or they don't even care to be. Like there was a time where first and foremost, we wanted to be attractive to the opposite sex. And I'm not saying that we don't want to feel and look our best. That being said, I got to be blunt. Like most of us don't give a shit if some random guy finds us appealing.
Right.
And so do you think that sort of empowers us to speak up because we're not trying to be quiet and pretty and attractive to every single person around us?
I think there is a certain kind of power in that. I'm laughing to myself as you're saying that. And I went, yeah, I can remember when I first got married and it was like, you know, we humped like bunnies. You know, that was what my marriage was in the first 10 years. We're just going to hump like bunnies. And as you get older, well, first of all, I mean, there's the hormonal change that goes on, number one. But hopefully, number two is that women begin to recognize that there is a different kind of beauty that needs more attention than the beauty they used to give to their, you know, with their face creams and makeup and whatnot. There's a different kind of beauty that you owe an allegiance to as you get older. And it's the soul work. It's the soul work of growing into a full and mature human being. That's, to me, is what makes a woman attractive, is if she has done that kind of soul work. And by soul work, I'm not going to put like a religious overlay on it, but I will say it's that inner work of how do you talk to yourself, see yourself? How do you love yourself? Do you forgive yourself? It's on the inside, not on the outside.
Right. I used to look for approval in the craziest places, you know, and now I don't really care if you approve of what I'm doing.
Isn't that liberating?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I believe we care less about the things that don't matter and more about those things that do. And that's why we're able to stand up and speak up because we know what matters.
Right. That's what this time is. That's what midlife onward is all about. It's the third chapter in a story is where that arc of transformation really happens. That's where you see the great transformation, that the character's been transported through all these obstacles and all this crap they've had to work through in their life or their journey. And now there's this moment of transformation. And it's not really a moment. I mean, it's decades. It's your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. It's like, how will you march to the horizon upon which eternity lingers? How will you do that? This is a time of new vision. I mean, I think that 50 is a really crucial birthday. When are you going to be 50?
April.
April. You're an Aries. I love that.
Yes. A 50-year-old Aries.
Yeah. Well, it's good.
It is. It is. It's funny because I started really becoming passionate about life over 40 when I was 45. That's when I was like 45, 40 thrive. And then I just kind of went with it. I coach and I mentor and all of that. And then just recently I started to get that like, holy crap, I'm turning 50. And so I can only imagine, somebody listening could go, oh, this is all great. Kumbaya. Let's sit in a circle, hold hands. And isn't aging wonderful? But what if someone's not feeling that? Do you have any tips for maybe tiptoeing into the empowerment of midlife, or are we just screwed if we're not feeling it?
God, that would be a terrible answer to give. You're screwed. You're screwed. Sorry, it's over. That is a provocative question if you don't feel it. And I read an article recently about, what if you're just not feeling this whole positive aging stuff? And I would say it's worth the investigation. If you're not feeling it, you still, at every stage of life, whether you're 68 years old or you're 28 years old, you have to find some joy in your life.
Right.
Because that's what makes life worth living. So if you get to a point where you're aging and you just go, this sucks, and that's your only mantra, you're kind of doomed.
Yeah. Right.
So can you find joy in life? Because joy is not contingent upon the number of years that you've lived. Joy comes from all kinds of things that have nothing really to do with you. Can you get outside of yourself? Can you get away from your own thinking and sit on your front porch and look at the beauty of the neighborhood go by? Can you take a walk and appreciate the park?
And can you find joy in the things that you truly find joy in and not what you think you should find joy in at this period?
Well, that's a dilemma in our culture right now, isn't it? I mean, in addition to the positive aging movement, there's this whole big choose only joy, positive only all the time. I would like to kick the positive aging, positive joy all the time movement in its little yaya. And, because as you said at the first part of the show, we had this whole conversation that came full circle about, yeah, but don't you want to have the real conversations with your girlfriends? It's like, yes, I have suffering at this time of my life. Yes, I have grappling at this time of my life. But where is there joy in your life? Because it's never an either or, is it?
Right.
It's always a big sloppy and. I mean, that's been my experience. And I'm going to be 69 in April.
Whoa. You look amazing.
That happened. Thank you.
Wait, April what? I have to know now.
April 1st.
April 2nd.
Oh, no kidding. Oh my gosh. See, I'll remember your birthday now because it's
and
like
I'll always
right
remember yours. I'm sure everyone does. So you're going to be 69 in April. So what would you say if you were going to be the ghost of Christmas future here? What are some lessons that you've learned after 50?
I've learned to be honest with myself and forgiving of myself. I'm a flawed person and I'm a good person. Both are true at the same time. I've learned that reinvention is really what it's all about. That reinvention is a sign of awakening, that each time you reinvent yourself, each time you give yourself a second chance, each time you dream a new dream, that is awakening. And something I didn't realize in my 40s was I thought I was going to arrive at a destination where I just kind of had it all wired. And I wasn't working on some wound from my childhood.
Right.
And I, had this kind of maturity and poise to go onward. But that isn't what happens. It's up and down motion, just as it has been your entire life. If you want to know what 69 is like, go back and look at what it was like to live in your 20s. It was very up and down. Mm-hmm. There were things in my 20s that I would never go back to.
Amen.
Amen.
But I love that you say that there's no end game here.
No.
I mean, we all know what the end game looks like,
Right.
And so as long as we are alive, there's a process, there's always growth. And I love the work you're doing and at the age that you're doing it, because I talk to a lot of women about if you could go back and talk to the younger version of you, what would you tell them to do? And maybe more movement or, have the piece of cake, don't have the whole cake, whatever it is that you would tell. You are living and breathing all of those lessons that you've learned, and you're living by example. And so it's really nice for someone who may be 10 years behind you, 20 years behind you, to see the path that you've created for yourself.
I like being an older woman. I like living by example. I don't want to find a group of 40-year-olds and say to them, let me tell you how it's done.
Right.
Because if I was 40 and a woman said that to me, I'd just resent it.
Yeah.
So I do want to live by example. And part of my example is holding a vision for myself. I think it's really important to have a vision for yourself in each decade of your life. And my vision in this decade of my life, going into my 70s, is I want to be an uplifter of other women. I know that it's hard. I mean, the moms right now that, my gosh, are doing like work and the homeschooling.
Right.
How is that even possible? So I think that vision is an important one for all of us, that at the beginning of every decade, we ask ourselves, what do I want my 50s to be? What do I want my 60s to be?
Right.
The HR person that always used to ask you that, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Mm-hmm. And giving ourselves the grace and permission to change that.
Yes.
Because as we enter a new decade, sometimes we kind of hang on to the idea of what we think should be. And it's courageous to go, you know what? I'm not going to live like that. I'm actually going to do something different, something that I feel is aligned with who I am. And I think there are fewer shoulds as we get older.
Hopefully that's true. I mean, having a vision for a decade of your life is a little like joining a gym in January. We know what happens. It's like the game plan is going to change. I know the first week you went every single day, but the game plan is going to change. But I think change is good. That it takes me back to that thing of reinvention. Reinvention is great. That is great awakening each time you reinvent yourself. And the message I share with women now is, when are you too old to dream? When are you too old to give yourself a second chance? Because I don't see a cutoff point. I don't see a destination point. You just keep living life as vitally as you can for as long as you can.
Right. And the way you do that could change decade to decade or day to day. It's totally up to you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's go back to this awesome book. What can we expect in a delightful little book on aging?
Well, a delightful little book on aging is like a little bit of chocolate that you lay down on your bedside table. Just take a little piece at night. It's a slim volume of essays about my experience with aging. I like to work from story because we're all connected by our stories. Mm-hmm. So if I tell you a story about what this was like, it would stimulate you, hopefully, to go, oh yeah, I remember something like that in my life too. So a delightful little book on aging is a slim volume of essays about the delights of aging and also the sorrow and the grief of aging. Because as you get older, you begin to lose siblings, parents, friends. And so there's always a little backdrop of grief that is present in your life. And grief, in my estimation, is one of the great transformative forces. We tend to hold it in abeyance because anguish hurts, but anguish is only a small portion of grief. And after the anguish part is over, then it's a matter of longing and missing and lamenting. But those things can actually power us forward into a greater love. It texture our hearts into a greater compassion. So I am a proponent of dive deeply into the grief. Stay with it long enough for it to teach you something, and don't stay with it so long that you get stuck there.
Right. Now, how do you know the difference?
Well, I just think that we all know when we're stuck. There's that sense of, I don't know.
Right.
And I actually think that it's very visceral, that, you feel it in your body. Twyla Tharp, who's a dancer in New York, wrote a great book recently called Keep It Moving. Twyla Tharp is in her 70s. And she says in dance, there are only two movements. There is contraction and there is expansion. That's what dancers do. But she said it's a great metaphor for life, because when you contract the body, like not moving, not stimulating the mind or the intellect, then the heart and the mind are going to follow when you contract. So I like this idea of, keep expanding it as you go on, that's one of the ways that we stay vital and healthy and love our life.
You're absolutely right in that you can find more meaning and more purpose and more of yourself in grief. And I just encourage anyone listening to allow themselves to feel. So just to give you a backstory, and I've talked to my listeners about this, but my sister died on July 3rd of a brain tumor, and she was 58. And it's really, really messed with a lot of things in my life. My mom was 39 when she died, but that was all I knew. I was 3. And so that was just kind of like part of my foundation. But losing my sister has really rocked me to my core, and at the same time, given me more purpose. It shows me that not only is it really important to live a life that is aligned and authentic to who we are in this moment and not care about other people, but that we have a responsibility and an opportunity to have these conversations with other women who may be feeling lonely, or who may be going through similar circumstances, or who may be feeling all of the shoulds, and we can share with them our stories and exchange stories. So I love that your book comes from a place of storytelling, because there's so much power in that and solidarity as women. Even if your story is completely different from my story, it does encourage me to own my own story, and to speak up about it. Because I think, like, even with my sister, I didn't want to talk about it necessarily, but I think it's really important because we're looking at midlife as this, like, okay, the next 30 years, but sometimes there's not the next 30 years.
Right.
And I don't say that to be like buried in my grief. I say that to encourage someone who may be listening to do the damn thing.
Do the soul work.
Yes, find that joy, however it is for you. I think it's really important to do that.
Yep, it's true.
I just appreciate all that you're doing and that you share yourself with the 40 Thrive audience. Just keep doing it.
I appreciate the support and the love. And I have a book I'm working on now that will be out next August.
Oh, cool.
Called Creatrix Rising, Unlocking the Power of Midlife Women. And it's a lot about what we've been talking about. What is the story that we tell from the day that we turn 50, which is kind of a shocking birthday, I admit, till the end of our lives. And there's great power and there's great vitality. And we just have to open ourselves to that.
Excellent.
Just to get in a little promo.
We'll have to have you back and talking about that when it comes out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on and being a part of 40 Thrive and sharing all of your words of wisdom. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. I enjoyed your words of wisdom as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. The best thing you could possibly do is make sure that you are subscribed to the show. You will get alerts every time a new episode is up, and it just helps us reach more people. Also, share it with a friend. The one, she could use a little inspiration in this age and stage. We're still bringing you brand new episodes this year. I have not taken a break, and we'll be helping you thrive even more in 2021. So keep coming back and keep sharing it with friends, please. Thank you so much. Happy holidays. Take care and keep thriving. Spring has sprung, and with the change of seasons, sometimes comes an increase in vitality. If you're feeling in the mood for a little more personal time, may I suggest Coconut. Coconut is all about providing clean and natural ingredients when you're enjoying your most intimate moments, with or without a partner. Naturally safe products developed by people who are obsessed with quality. Get 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/Coconut. That's 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/Coconut.